Don't be so quick to resolve all of the tension in your life. Some of it could be necessary or critical for you to get ahead in life or to access your creativity. Hey guys, tension usually makes us feel anxious or uncomfortable. Most of us are not adrenaline junkies, and so when we find ourselves tense, we want to relieve that tension quickly. That can be a mistake, depending on what's causing the tension. Sometimes holding things in tension can be the very thing that makes for some real breakthroughs in life, whether you're working on self-improvement or doing creative work, or even when you're trying to make spiritual progress. In this video, I want to talk about the difference between stress and eustress, creative tension, the coincidence of opposites, and what is the optimal amount of tension you want so that you can do your best work and optimize your life. First up, eustress and distress. Distress refers to the bad kind of stress, the overwhelming stress that impairs our ability to function. Conversely, eustress, or good stress, is positive, motivating, adaptive, and genuinely helpful. What's the difference? Well, stress is a normal physiological and psychological response, but how individuals respond to it can make a huge difference, all right? So in the case of distress, we have a negative stress response that often involves negative feelings and feeling psychologically reactive, okay? The type of stress that results from being overwhelmed by demands, by losses, sometimes by perceived threats. Distress triggers physiological changes in our bodies that can actually pose health risks, especially if we don't have really good ways of adapting to stress and we turn to things like drugs or alcohol or something like that, or we engage in risky behaviors, all right? So distress is what we really don't want in our life. But eustress, or good stress, is a positive stress response. It involves optimal levels of stimulation, type of stress that results from challenging but attainable goals, from enjoyable tasks, from worthwhile things, like maybe hitting a PR in the gym or finishing a big project or something like that. It has a beneficial effect on us because it causes a sense of fulfillment and achievement, and it facilitates growth and development and mastery. It also is the kind of thing that pushes us to really high levels of performance. And good stress, eustress, has also been positively correlated with overall life satisfaction and well-being. Okay? So, eustress is primarily based on perception. How you perceive your given situation, how you perceive your given task. It's not what's actually happening or what's causing the stress, it's how you perceive it or how you respond or react to it. All right? So, this is related then. Eustress is thus related to self-efficacy. And your self-efficacy is your estimation of how well you can carry out a given task or a role or some kind of activity. If you have low self-efficacy, you'll see the demand in front of you as more distressful than eustressful, because you'll perceive or you'll believe that your abilities to handle it are not sufficient to the task. Okay? When you have high self-efficacy, you can set higher goals and be more motivated to achieve them. So one of the things you want to do is to increase your self-efficacy and your skills in order to increase the good stress in your life so that you're highly motivated to pursue larger goals and bigger outcomes. All right? So clearly what I want to talk about in this video is eustress, not distress. All right? So having made the distinction between good stress and bad stress, let's talk about one kind of stress or tension, and that is creative tension. Creative tension was a term used by Peter Senge in his 1990 book, The Fifth Discipline. This was a big business book in its day. And he described creative tension as the gap between vision and current reality. Or to put it another way, it's the gap between where you are today and where you want to be down the road, or what your vision is for the future. Okay? So the bigger the gap between where we are and where we want to be, the greater the stress, the more tension we feel. And that makes us feel uncomfortable, right? But at the same time, that gap is also a source of energy for us. Okay? When we really want our desired results, then we're really motivated to want to pursue them. If there were no gap, there would be no need for any action to move toward the vision. Kind of makes some sense, okay? Creative tension motivates us because it gives us a sense of urgency. We want to reduce the tension by resolving the issues that's causing it, okay? The problem is most of us don't resolve creative tension in a way that's beneficial. That is, we don't actively pursue the goal that we're after. We don't actively go after our vision. Instead, what we try to do is relieve the tension in one of two unproductive ways. Okay, so the first way that's unproductive is that we lower our vision so that we reduce the gap between where we are today and where we want to be in the future. We just drop our vision down a bit. All right, that does reduce the tension for sure, but it also reduces your motivation and your creativity to make your vision a reality. And ultimately, you're not going to get what you really want because you have set your sights lower than that. So you're ultimately going to be disappointed. You've settled, and you've settled for less, okay? The second way we reduce tension is by distracting ourselves and by self-medicating, and we all know about this. So that results in making absolutely no progress at all because all we're doing is ignoring the problem and doing something else that makes us feel good in the moment. It does nothing to make progress towards achieving the vision. So as soon as we're done with the distraction or with the self-medication, the tension just comes right back and we're in the same place where we were to begin with, right? There is a second kind of tension that I want to talk about, and this is what we call is the coincidence of opposites, or even more erudite in Latin, the coincidentia oppositorum, all right? And in this case, tension is present in a given situation where it's not the tension between current reality and a future goal that we're after, but it's a tension between two seemingly opposing elements at the same time. They're present at the same time in the situation. So as you're in a situation where there's maybe two right choices to be made and you can't pick between the two that are there, or maybe between pain and pleasure, or making progress or regressing in some way. Or maybe there's a situation where there's some tension between your own personal autonomy and your responsibility to a larger group. Okay? In these cases, both opposing elements are somehow present. They presuppose each other. They're both necessary in the situation, and they're dependent on each other. All right? And if one of the elements is missing, there's no creativity, there's no progress that goes on. And it's not good to collapse one element into the other one or to privilege one above the other one, because the way forward actually depends on maintaining the tension, maintaining both opposing things at the same time. All right? So now you might ask, is there an optimal amount of tension in a given situation? As we said at the beginning, tension feels pretty bad. It makes us anxious. We really want to get out of it, and just make it go away as quickly as possible. But there is actually an optimal amount that we're aiming to have in a given situation or when we're engaged in a task or something that does us the most good. And Stephen Kotler tells us that there is. In his book, The Art of Impossible, a Peak Performance Primer, Kotler talks about a particular kind of tension that creates the optimal state of flow. Flow is Kotler's term for optimal performance, for being in the zone. You've probably known the feeling where you've been really engaged in a fantastic task, so much that all your attention is focused right there and you don't even notice the passage of time. And you're just really you're in your groove. And then after a while you look up and say, wow, look what time it is. Man, I worked straight through lunch. I didn't even know it was that late. I was so much into it. When you're in that state, that's when you're in a state of flow. Okay, and that's a really optimal state for really getting a lot of stuff done. It's where a lot of creativity takes place. And so it's a sweet spot. You want to be there as often as you can. And so the tension that Kotler talks about in this situation is what he calls the challenge skills balance. Challenge skills balance. That is how challenging a given task is versus the skills you bring to it in order to solve it. All right. He says, and I quote, "The challenge skills balance is the most important of flow's triggers, and it's worth reviewing why. Flow demands task-specific focus. We pay the most attention to the task at hand when the challenge of that task slightly exceeds our skill set. That's the sweet spot. If the challenge is too great, fear swamps the system. That is, anxiety builds up, we become uncomfortable, and we just want to quit because we don't want to put up with the tension. On the other hand, if the challenge is too easy, we stop paying attention to it. And that's because we get bored with it. Okay? So flow appears near, but not on the emotional midpoint between boredom and anxiety. All right? In what scientists call the flow channel. It's the spot where the task is hard enough to make us stretch, but not hard enough to make us snap. So that's the point that we really want to get into. All right, here. Kotler goes on to say that if we really want to get into flow, if we want to operate in an optimal state, then we need to regulate the difficulty of the tasks that we do so that they're just a little bit outside of our comfort zone, to where we have to stretch ourselves just a little bit. If the task is too easy, we need to figure out a way to make it just a little bit harder so that we can push our edge a little bit. And if the task is too hard, we need to break it down into something more manageable, but still stretches us just a little bit. All right? So if you want to make your best progress at anything, but especially if you want to function optimally, to get into the zone and to soar, you need to get out of your comfort zone just a little bit. Lean into your fear. Push your edge and learn to love the feeling of being in that tense, edgy, sweet spot. If you do that, you'll do fantastically. All right, so I've talked about creative tension, eustress and distress, the gap between your present reality and your desired future, the coincidence of opposites, and we've talked about the optimal amount of tension you should try to maintain in any given situation so that you can function optimally. All right, so thanks for watching. I hope I've given you something to think about, something to chew over, and more, I hope I've helped you come to a better understanding of how useful tension or stress can be in making progress in your life. If you appreciated the discussion today, please like the video, leave me a comment. I absolutely love hearing from you and engaging with you. Drop your email onto my website if you would please, so that I can update you on all the content and the programs that I'll be introducing in the coming weeks and months. And the reason that I'm here on social media is because I really want to help you get your balls back, your mind back, and your heart back so that you can have the life and the relationships that you want. All right, if that resonates with you, subscribe to the channel, drop an email on my website so I can continue to give you good progress to help you optimize your life. And lastly, if you found this useful, share it with another man who might find it useful as well. All right, as always, guys, I appreciate you. Thanks much.